Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar tonight. It is great to have all of you connecting for our presentation on the 5 digital impacts shaping sports business. It is a pleasure, as I said, to welcome all of you. Tonight, we have the pleasure of having Stephen Bourke, who is the Program Director of Managing Digital Transformation in Sports. I'm going to turn it over to him in just a moment. But before that, I'd like to just introduce myself and also who we are at SBI Barcelona. So my name is Diego Valdez. I'm the director at the Sports Business Institute Barcelona. And for those of you that may not know about us, we specialize in providing training for those that want to advance, develop, or start their career in the business side of sports with a particular focus in football. We also run a program called Managing Digital Transformation in Sports. And that's precisely why we're doing the webinar tonight, because a lot of what we fit in, a lot of what we will talk about tonight will fit in with the program that we're starting next month in March. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. As I said, tonight the webinar will be moderated by myself, and then Stephen will be presenting. And it should last approximately 45 minutes to an hour. So Stephen, it's a great pleasure having you here. Welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Diego. It's a pleasure to be online as well and be connected with everyone around the globe.
Perfect. So I'd just like to make sure that everybody can hear us okay. So if you want to go ahead and type in the chat box, okay. And also, as we always like to do in these webinars, we like to see where you're coming from, where you're connecting from. So type in the country, the city where you're connecting from, because we always like to, like I said, know where our audience is based. So, and that also gives us an opportunity to make sure that the sound is coming in clearly. So we have Justin from Dunedin. Welcome, Justin. Eric from Oslo. Hi, Eric. Nice to see you. Santiago from Argentina. We have someone from Qatar, Kuwait, Brazil, Bulgaria, Brussels, wow, Ghana, Scotland. Excellent. So we have, as always, a very global and diverse audience. So we're looking forward to engaging with you. By the way, the webinar structure will be as follows. Like I said, in just a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen for his presentation, where he's going to talk about the 5 digital impacts that are shaping sports business. So you want to stay tuned for that. Then we're going to do an overview of the program Managing Digital Transformation in Sports. This is an online certificate program that starts in March, at the end of March. And essentially it allows you to understand the digital disruption in sport. And you're going to see that, as I said, a lot of what Stephen is going to touch upon fits in with the global perspective of this certificate. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session where you guys will be able to, through the chat box, ask your questions to Stephen. Stephen, of course, is an authority in this subject matter. He is the program director of the course, and he's put together fantastic material. So you really do want to pay attention, close attention to what Stephen's going to share with us tonight. So without further ado, Stephen, I'll turn it over to you, and we're all ears, very keen to hear what you have to share with us.
Okay, thanks, Diego. As you mentioned, the title of this is called the 5 digital impacts and how they have an influence on sport business. I was deliberate in the use of the word impacts rather than trends. We're not talking about social media trends or digital media trends. These are kind of macro topics that are impacting sports business, the economy in general, and they will always stay so. The first one is that we're in the midst of a digital media revolution, and this revolution is really gaining pace as we go each year. And that's because of this thing, because we all carry around with us now a supercomputer. And it's different than in any other time through history where it's actually been business that had led the revolution and the change. But this time it's people who are in control, whose behavior is being changed and are disrupting ourselves. And it's the companies that are having to follow us and catch on. And so what I've done to illustrate this from from a fan's point of view, there's a bit of content on here, but we'll unpack it for you in terms of the highlights. But what I wanted to point out is that because we now, as fans, we now have so many different ways that we can consume content, and we've always heard about that. But what I wanted to do was put together a screenshot or an infographic that shows that exactly. You know, when I started following sport, you could get your fix on TV, on radio, newspaper, and that was about it, as well as going to the game on the weekend. Now, everyone is a content producer, and that goes from the fans to the athletes, streaming platforms, sports media themselves, and the teams and leagues. So that's because there's so many different technology platforms now available in the digital economy that enable that kind of thing. So I'll go through some of the highlights of change that has happened. As we know, the teams are expert now at developing content, but it's the way that people are consuming the content that is really shifting, and it's shifting quickly because Gen Z, millennials are really having an influence as the older fans, move ever older, I guess. And so what we're seeing, for example, is that about 2/3 of Gen Z and millennials now choose to engage with sport on social media other than on traditional TV. And about half of that cohort get their news and team updates from social media, and also original TV, linear TV, which we can call it, is also now being overtaken by YouTube. So younger people prefer to go to YouTube. And so because people now have these preferences, it means that the business of sport has got to work out how to catch up with people and actually overtake them, and start to identify where the fan base's attention is going, and to get to that as quickly as possible. And so that's a new challenge. As I said before, previously in the analog world, it was about the team putting the team onto the pitch on the weekend, putting the basics down in a venue for the fans to come along. Now it's so much more, and that's why we always talk about fan experience. The other big thing that's happening is the streaming platforms like Twitter and Facebook are now buying the rights for live broadcast. And what that means, different than terrestrial TV, is that they know the fans because they have the data, because it's a digital first platform, so that they are able to package those events up in a far more personalized way for corporate partners. And so that really becomes more of a preferable place for advertisers to meet fans as well. And then one of the other powerful changes is Twitch TV, which features eSports. They have something like 2+ million broadcasters are actually putting content on each month. There's about 17 million people, individual users, going on to Twitch TV each month as well. And if you've ever been on Twitch TV, looked at an esports or gaming competition, you'll know it's got a different look and feel than normal TV. And as the NBA commissioner, Adam Silver, has said, television broadcast hasn't evolved that much in the last 30 years. And he sees that their broadcast will go to become more like what Twitch is like, in that you see interactive conversation happening on screen, different boxes that you can choose to view your content, and so on. The other big impact is that athletes themselves are becoming their own media companies. And we saw that when Ronaldo moved to Juventus earlier this year, and the number of people who went across with him because they were more loyal to him as an athlete than they were to the fan. Because now, as people, we want to follow athletes on social media whose lifestyle we feel closely connected to. And that's why, for example, Mo Salah is such a powerful, influential figure in the Middle East where I'm based, because people reflect that in their lifestyle. And so now it's a matter of people gravitating towards athletes first too. And then there's platforms that are coming out that are providing athletes with that voice, platforms like the Players' Voice and the Players' Tribune. And athletes are happy to communicate in that way because they don't have to go through journalists. They can write their own messages and know that they're getting consumed directly by fans. And that's something that gives them a more trusted feel. It gives the fans more authenticity to that messaging as well. And then there's fans themselves producing a lot of content, and we know when we're watching a match, people are talking about the game. There's hashtags and so on, and so we can join in conversations and communities around that. So as I said from the outset, there's so many different content points. And the trick now for a sports business is to identify where it wants to be strong and to make sure it gets ahead of what the consumer or the fan wants. Because, like I said at the outset, social media trends, for example, change rapidly. So they need to lock down on what your content management or publishing strategy is going to be, and then you can get swept along with the trends. The second point then is, if we're going to be in the middle of a digital media revolution, then what should we do? We should become a digital media business ourselves. And so this point is devoted to that topic. Once again, as in the first one, I've prepared a model exclusively for this webcast that actually gives a visualized view of what it means to become a digital media company. Now, of course, we're not all starting from 0 or 100. We're not either nowhere or the full digital media company. So we're going to be somewhere along this kind of continuum, but maybe we got there kind of in an ad hoc way. So, but if you're going to take a strategic approach, then it would look something like this. So the first thing that you want to do is prepare to have a strong online presence, and that takes leadership investment in it. One of the surprising things that I've noted in my research is that something like only 30% of all organizations have social media objectives tied to corporate objectives. So yes, the marketing department is feeling good about the reach they're getting and that kind of thing, but is it really going and giving the organization shareholder value? So part of it is to work out what the organization really wants from digital and social media, and then to make sure that whole area is enabled through resources, through organization structure, through goals, through technology, and that it's actually given the priority that it should have inside of the organization. Then the next thing to do is to publish brave content. There's so much noise, so much clutter out on social media, as we all know, that you need to be unique. You need to have a strong presence that's backed by the leadership within the organization to push out great content. And AS Roma are a great case study in this, and their owner has even been quoted as saying, if I see something that I think is boring on social media that's AS Roma content, he said, I lose it. And so he's really invested in the process, but it also spurs the people on to be really brave. And you only have to look at the AS Roma content to know that they're at the cutting edge in everything they do. So that's a whole organization culture and executive support system going to be them being able to produce that great content online. And so what that then does is it grows their online fan base. And what they are then able to do is that they're then able to study with leadership what is working. So that they look at, okay, what's giving us great engagement, and to study that, to find out the reasons behind it, and then to work out where they can go deeper on that. There's an interesting process that Coca-Cola use, which they call their 70-20-10 program, which is 70% of the content is the easy stuff to do, 20% is the stuff that they know is going to be innovative, and they're pushing on that. And then there's another 10% that is going to be the, if you like, the 20 and 70% of the future. But that's the stuff that is really to take some time to create and be new and fresh content for the future. So they They're continuing to innovate to give people a reason to follow them online. Then the next part, as you grow that online base, is to then understand and analyze the prospects for commercializing it. So using social analytics, and Gatorade are a great example here. They set up a mission control in their headquarters in Boston, where they've got screens all over. It's like a war room, and they see all the different conversations that are happening around the different themes of theirs, as well as their own content. How's that resonating in real time when they're getting people engaging, that they join in those conversations? When they're getting people asking questions, they're communicating to it, and all the while they're building up their knowledge of the lifestyle attributes of those people who are consuming their product. And it's the same with a fan base. And so from understanding that the fans, the next part is to then work out, okay, what are the different categories that we can create for our social assets? That they can be, certain examples are the team lineup, the MVP, even the medical report, Q&As, podcasts. There's so many different digital properties and the point is, but like with sponsorship, is to work out what are all your saleable assets are, and to put them with the different type of people who are consuming that content. And then you're able to move on to the commercializing aspect, which is then to match partners with those categories. And Barcelona do this exceptionally well around their game day activations. And I mentioned before the medical report, and they've actually got a hospital as their sponsor of the medical report. So when injuries come out of the game, that brand is attached to it, and it looks very organic. It doesn't look forced at all, which is really important. And the other thing that engaging with brands to be partners with online content is it opens up another channel of activation. And we see that the best brands, the biggest teams are really good at getting their corporate partners involved in a way that helps them to create brave content. And so then back around, we go through that cycle. And so if you've got 10, 15, 20 sponsors all helping you to create content, then it really is a self-fulfilling prophecy around this business model. The third one, what we need to talk about is talk about eSports. We hear so much about the big numbers around people watching and taking in the eSports competitions, but it's really the impact that it's having on sports that I want to focus on. So what we'll do now is we'll try and queue up a few seconds of Fortnite's Marshmallow in-game concert. Okay, so it seems that there may have been a little bit of a audio issue there, but it doesn't matter. What you can see there is in a Fortnite game, what the organisers did was that they actually put Marshmallow's live set, like an electronic dance music set. They built that into the game, and it had incredible graphics, incredible virtual reality, if you like. It was really immersive. The concert itself at the time had 10 million concurrent users. Since then, which it was probably a couple of weeks ago, there's been something like 27 million views of it on YouTube. So you can see that, and actually at the time, Peter Moore, who's Liverpool CEO who used to be in charge of EA Sports, and EA Sports are the ones who have got all the sports titles. So he knows as well as anyone that kind of crossover or impact that esports can have on the sports community. He came out and said, my biggest threat, the thing that I have to manage against the most, is Fortnite at the moment. And, that's a pretty powerful statement. And one of the things that esports has over sports is that it's digital first. So that means that I can access it anywhere. It can be in the back of my parents' car, driving somewhere. I can be, on Twitch TV watching something. Sport doesn't have that luxury. It's at a fixed date and time. And sure, we can help build the event up through social media and so on, but to actually be engaging into the game itself is a fixed thing that is really difficult to overcome. And the other thing about esports being digital is, once again, like the streaming platforms, when they take on live broadcasts, is that the broadcasters, the owners, know the data. They know that the fans very well because they're sharing information with them all the time. And so they already have that understanding of who their fans are, who their followers are, the sort of characteristics that those people display. So they're able to go and reach out to brands who might be interested in sponsoring them. And as I mentioned from the start, this one section is about how esports is taking brands and fans. Well, you look at the likes of Coca-Cola and McDonald's, who have traditionally been massive sponsors of the Olympic movement, of FIFA even. They're starting to phase out their sponsorship commitment in sports and move it over to international series events with esports, because it's such a better fit for them. And the other thing is that esports has as such an appeal is that it's getting fans or people interested who are future consumers at a much earlier age, and because it's so sticky as well, that the association can be really strong and over a long period of time. At a fan level, there was a survey done in 2017. It's called the Kleiner-Perkins Internet Report, and the survey found that the same amount of people who are millennials favor their esports team strongly as those who have a strong affinity for their team. So, and that was at 27% each. So already we're seeing that about the same amount of people in the millennial bracket are starting to feel the same about their favorite esports or their favorite esports team as those people who follow sports do. So it goes to naturally align that means that those people could potentially have been sports fans before, but now that they have the choice of being esports fans, they're favoring that. And we can expect this to happen more as more virtual reality, more concepts like Fortnite's concert, blending music, really growing the culture of what esports is, becomes more pronounced, and esports arenas become more prominent as well, that give people actually a practical space that they can go and hang out in and share community with other gamers as well. So the value proposition of esports is only going to grow. So what sports are now doing is working out their own place in it, because they have to. The Major League Soccer have got a very good model where they actually see that through FIFA game, that often the first experience that young people will have with the game of football is actually through the FIFA game. So they're embracing that, and they've done a partnership with EA Sports. They've actually just recently connected with Twitch TV as well. So that they're hoping that they can bring in a new breed of football fan using esports as a gateway. And other teams and leagues are also working out, how to best approach esports, because it's such a new area. Working out, strategizing how to participate in it is actually one of the most challenging factors. And actually, Golden State Warriors in the NBA, they bought a an esports team, not in basketball, but in one of the competitive gaming, multiplayer battle competitions, because they wanted to understand what an esports consumer or fan does, so that they can learn off that and adapt that into their sports fan profile as well. So there's a number of reasons why sports organizations might buy into esports, but it's about working out that why first, and then working out the best way. And that's the part that sports struggles with the most at this stage. The next point is that all sports businesses must be based on analytics. You've probably heard by now that data is the new oil, and analytics are its refinery. But really, that means that data and analytics are a strategic asset for an organization. And there's a prominent analyst, Ray Wang is his name, and he forecasts that if you don't have 20% of your business model based on data, then you're actually not going to have a sustainable business model for the future. And if we look at sport is fortunate in that the fans produce a lot of data in their interaction with the team, whether that's through social media, website, ticket buying, merchandising. It might be the fantasy game. It could be loyalty app. It could be Wi-Fi at the venue. Multiple different points that no other industry actually has that kind of access. So we are able to build up a great fan profile, and now organizations need to make sure they do that, because as a fan, we're also a consumer, and we know that Amazon knows us so well, or Uber knows us so well, and all of those kind of things, that we expect that same level of personalization from our team, because we've given them, and we continue to give them, a lifetime of loyalty. So in fact, every sports organization now is becoming its own mini Amazon, if you like. The image that we've got here is what I wanted to show you, is that sometimes teams will go and ask the fans for their data, which is one of the best ways to actually do it. And so here the Minnesota Timberwolves put together a campaign. It has many different screens that the fans could choose from, but it was all about getting to know the fan. That they asked them to pick their favorite player. They asked them, what kind of demographic do you belong to? Are you a night out person? That's why you come to the game. Do you come with family? Do you come with your partner? And so on. Do you have young kids? And so after they build up all of this profile of all of the individuals, they can then go back out to them and start to communicate with them as individuals. So on an email campaign, for example, they might say, we know your favorite player is X, so X, and then go on. And then that starts to build up a positive sentiment in the individual. And the point being is that no sports organization should be doing things in the name of fan engagement for the point of view of revenues. It should be based on the experience and the relationships, and the revenues will come on the back of that. And that's an important point. And it's actually the part that the data is able to unlock. So I spoke before about becoming a media company. So you put a media company with a data company, and that's the type of evolution that sports organizations need the journey that they need to go on. And in fact, we're starting to see certain organizations, Inter Milan created their own internal media house. Bayern Munich have done the same. And what they do is they put all the analytics people together with the social people, together with the tech people, and they create. So what they're doing is they're forcing the organization to collaborate, but they're forcing them to collaborate around the mission of being a digital media company. And that's what digital transformation for sports business is all about, because they know that giving value through media and then understanding the results of that and getting to know their fans is the way forward in terms of commercializing the organization. So then when we come to the fifth of the what I think are the most influential impacts is that digital transformation. I was just touching on it then, and been building the business case for it as we've spoken. But it's really starting to take hold. And if you look at this infographic that come from Google, you can see how much people have been interested in the term from their search engine, particularly since 2016, and that will continue to grow exponentially, I'm sure. One of the interesting things for me, and I've been studying digital transformation for the best part of 5 years now, is that yes, it should be led by formal leadership to say, okay, we're going on a journey. We need to create a new purpose statement and move the whole organization towards that. But the reality is that very few times that happens first. It might happen if a team is a brand new startup, for example, but we're all ongoing organizations that have got a lot to do already with our day-to-day business. And so what you end up with is having two different things running. You've got the traditional business that's trying to transform, but you've also got agents of change that are actually operating in advance of leadership to say, actually, I know where we should be going, in our digital media space or our analytics space and so on. And so you've got these people inside of the organization, and what they're doing is they're having conversations with colleagues, maybe within their own department, across different departments, putting together ideas and business cases and having them go up the organization. And so what the course that I've designed is actually for leadership, but also for everyone else who wants to be an agent of change in the organization. Because it's one of the, I guess, sad facts of our current state of employment that most research will say that anywhere from 70 to 80 people are disengaged in their work, and more than 50% of people don't have the right tools they need to do their work properly. And so yes, there's all this technology, and innovation's a great word, and all of those things, and we have an outlook onto the customer first and fan engagement and all of those things, but the employee seems to be getting left a little behind, and that's because they don't have a real strong sense of purpose. And digital transformation actually gives that strength of purpose, and that's one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about this industry. And one of the case studies I reference is AS Roma, who have a great stated purpose that they want to be the most fan-connected team in the world. So every day their people get up and go to work inspired by that mission. Okay, everything that we're going to do is going to take us closer to that point of being the most fan-connected team in the world. And that creates its own momentum, its own motivation, and the results are reflected out onto social media, digital media, the acknowledgement they get publicly for being such an innovative leader in the digital transformation journey for sports organizations. So that's really all I wanted to say by way of introduction on those what I consider to be the five most important influences taking place at the moment. We can come back and, like I say, any questions that you have, type them in the chat box. We'll come back to them in a few minutes after we've heard a little bit from Diego.
Thank you, Stephen. It's really interesting to see how you've put together these impacts, because I think it summarizes very well where we're at and where we're going, whether we're looking at it from the digital revolution perspective, also looking at it from the perspective, as you said, from media, business, and sport, and how we have to grow, analyze, and commercialize the content, eSports, and of course analytics, which is something that we hear more and more about in the business of sport, leading to what you've just alluded to, digital transformation. And that's precisely the reason why we're here tonight, because we wanted to tie in all of this and let you know about our certificate program entitled Managing Digital Transformation in Sport. And the key word I think here is managing, because it's precisely what Stephen was talking about. It's about understanding, and it's about preparing for the disruption that we've touched upon just now through Stephen's presentation. Now, what do you, what can you expect to get out of this program? Well, these are just some of the points. So I'll go through them, but then I'll turn it over as well to Stephen if he wants to add anything. But essentially, we look at how to monetize digital assets for a sports organization. This is very important in this day and age, and many organizations are looking for the knowledge and the understanding on how to get this done. So that's a key area, one of the key concepts that we see throughout the program that Stephen has put together. Obviously, there's also a strategic overview for the deployment of new technology within a sports property. And as Stephen always likes to highlight, technology is only part of it, but it's also about the culture within an organization. So we really touch upon that as well, and how the culture within an organization needs to adapt to change. And of course, with the innovation and the technology that is out there today in the marketplace. Of course, new opportunities for fan engagement brought on by the digital era. We've all heard it, we've all known it, and Stephen has just touched upon this as well. It's a fan-led economy. The fan goes first in this day and age, and if organizations don't understand that, they're struggling. So this is something that is really something that gets very much highlighted in the program. And of course, we look at how to forecast and evaluate new digital trends in the business and sport ecosystem. So Stephen, of course, as you've just seen, has his finger on the pulse on these issues. So anything that comes up is always added, is updated into the course curriculum, because we want to make sure that what we're providing to you is not just a theory, but rather practical case studies that have had an impact in sports business, regardless of which sports property or sports organization they're implemented in. So that's something that we really look at as well, and we prepare our delegates on how to forecast and evaluate to take in these digital trends. And finally, one of the key advantages, and I would say that's probably one of the most important ones of the course, you get to network with top sports executives. We're just going to see in a moment some of the organizations that this course has attracted and the executives from those organizations. So one of the key benefits is that you're not just going to get great content and knowledge about the digital ecosystem, but you're also going to get an opportunity to learn from others that are navigating through the same challenges in other leagues, other clubs, other sports, and other brands as well. So this is one of the key elements of the program as well, that you get a chance to interact with other professionals who are, many of them already in the sports industry. Others come from, additional corporate sectors, which makes it for a cohort that is very strong, not just from a content knowledge perspective, but also from a networking and really a relationship building. We've seen relationships build online that transcend our course and that last for years. So this is another value added of the program. Stephen, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on this particular slide, anything that you think is relevant.
I would just say that one of the things that we also make sure that all the participants are able to do is evaluate where their own organization is in the digital maturity journey, because that's an important consideration. No two organizations are the same and go through the same journey because of a range of factors that can be as simple as the different level of technology that they already have within the organization, but also the different skill sets at the operational level, the different skill sets that the leaders have to actually embark on the change as well. So we give tools that allow people to do that. And the other important point is that we're talking about really a change management program brought on by the arrival of digital and social technologies. And as with any change management program, it's people that are the biggest barriers across a range of different topics. And so we explore all of those topics. So it's actually a people-led investigation of the journey primarily, and then we move on to the technology side, and we address the technology side in terms of how it changes people's behaviour as fans. And we talk about the mobile. So don't go into the detail of what the hardware and software behind a mobile is. We talk about what the impact of behaviour of fans is, and look at different technology applications and so on from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, which is in fact probably a good segue for us to touch upon the academic curriculum. By the way, like we said before, feel free to start thinking about questions, whether you want to talk about the digital impacts that Stephen brought up or the course itself that we're presenting now. We will have a question and answer period at the end. But like I said, that's what you were touching upon before. It's probably a good segue to go into a little bit more detail as to the academic curriculum.
Okay, so the curriculum split up into 4 different terms. What we do is we drop part of a module every couple of weeks, so it becomes like a guided but also self-paced evolution over a 3-month period. So the first one is an introduction. There's a lot of business case kind of content shared, and actually some of the previous participants have commented how much they like different content that is in the that is in all the material, because they then go back and take that and put that into presentations that they might be giving, or different business cases that they might be developing, and that's great feedback. But what we do is, like, we really try and hone into what the modern fan is within the broader context of the digital economy, because we can't separate what a consumer is and what a fan is, because we flick between those two, but we try to understand them in parallel where needs be. Then the second term, and 10 years ago we wouldn't have been able to do this section, which is to tell what the success and not successful approaches to having a valid digital transformation are. There's in any industry, sports business as an example, you can find probably 3 or 4 different categories of organization in terms of digital maturity. Some probably only 10 to 15% are digitally mature, others are emerging, and others are in their infancy state. And so what we look at is what's needed to move from state to state and become the most the best digital version of yourself. And as I mentioned before, that every organization has a different starting point, but the concepts behind success and the things that have to be looked out for as the barriers are all there, and they need to be adapted into each organization's own perspective. Then we talk about becoming a social business, in that, as I mentioned in the second slide about becoming a media business, it's not about becoming a print business. It's about becoming a media business in the sense of becoming social, becoming more like actually a person. If you look at the best sports businesses putting out content, they're not corporate at all. So what they're doing is they're moving to be more social, and that takes a lot of empowerment from the leadership, and it takes a lot of growth from inside of the organization to be able to reflect that. So we look at that journey from a strategic basis, but also numerous case studies, practical examples as well. And then finally, because the whole of the digital transformation that we're going through are underpinned by data and technology, we look at them as 2 different modules in the final term.
Right. Now, moving on to the organizations and the executives that this program has attracted. And I think both Stephen and I were very pleasantly surprised when we introduced this program, because as soon as this program was launched, we understood that it was a need that a lot of these executives, a lot of these organizations had, and were looking for a solution, and they found it in this program. And here on screen you just see some of the organizations that participated in the first 2 editions of this program. We had executives from FC Barcelona, Real Madrid, Liverpool, AZ Alkmaar, La Liga, FIFA, CONCACAF, the Mexican Federation, etc. I mean, you see them all on screen here. But more importantly, I would say, well, I think two interesting points to take away here. Number one is that it created a dynamic of discussion in the group that was extremely enriching, because you had, when we were discussing any of the cases through the live sessions, questions would come up or cases would come up about some of the challenges, some of the best practices that some of these guys had when they were, taking part in the course. And of course, as Stephen said, all of them at different stages of digital transformation. So that's one element that really enriched the learning experience, is that we were not just, presenting the content to the cohort, but the members of the cohort itself were actually adding value to the rest of the participants, because, by their very nature and experience, they were able to share some valuable insights that we would all, take away and understand and analyze from different perspectives. So that's on the one hand. And on the other hand, one of the really interesting things is that we've had a couple of our students that have been promoted or have moved on to positions of leadership within the digital landscape of those organizations. So, for example, we had someone who is now, after doing the course, working for the digital transformation team at FIFA. So that also told us that the content and the material that Stephen had prepared and that we, put together with this program was very relevant, because it told us that, okay, somebody got enough value out of this that, eventually FIFA headhunted them and brought them on board for their digital transformation team. And likewise at the USL, which for those of you that are not from North America, the USL is like the second division in the United States, like the championship in England. Well, the USL, we had someone from this organization who, after doing the program, went on to get a promotion and become the head of innovation of the USL. And like these cases, we've seen many others with AZ Alkmaar and Real Madrid and some others that whether they stayed within their organization and continued developing and growing, or as I mentioned at the outset, they moved on and went on to have leadership positions, particularly from a digital transformation standpoint in some of these organizations. So all that to say that the networking component in these types of programs is very high level. We do have people with very, I would say that it's a mix between senior experience, but also we have, junior, as Stephen said, agents of change that are looking to, bring this change within the organization as far as adapting to the digital economy. So that's, just what you see there on screen. I see we already have a few very interesting questions coming up in the chat box. So make sure you put your questions, because we're going to get to those in just a moment. So feel free to put them. I've already seen 3 or 4 that are very interested and relevant to what we've been discussing. I just want to finish off by saying that apart from the content, apart from the networking that you get in this type of program, we also bring in the best speakers from across different organizations in sports. So we're going to run through some of the confirmed speakers that we already have on board, and you're going to see that it really is a very strong lineup. So just, in fact, about 10 minutes before starting the webinar, I got a WhatsApp message from the CEO of River Plate, Gustavo Silkovic, who has said that he's very eager to participate in this course and share what River Plate are doing. So, he's a confirmed guest speaker, which shows us, a little bit of a football club that is, not your Man City or not your PSG with the massive resources or as Stephen was saying, a Bayern Munich. So these are clubs that they're huge brands, but that they're also needing to adapt to the digital transformation. And Gustavo is going to share with us his journey as the CEO of River Plate and some of the projects that they're involved in and some of the objectives that they have and that they've put in place moving forward. So as a part of the course, you're going to just, like I said, not only going to benefit from the content, but you're also going to have additional insights from some of these executives. Gustavo, in fact, is so keen on this program that he's decided to do the course himself. So not only is he going to be a guest speaker, he's actually going to be a classmate for those that enroll in the program. So just to highlight, some of the profiles. We also have David Fowler, who was formerly with FIFA, the head of strategy and intelligence at FIFA, and now the director of marketing at Maikujo. So, Stephen, tell us a little bit about what David is going to bring to the table.
Well, I spoke before about how we're in the midst of a digital media revolution and that organizations are transitioning to being digital media companies. These guys are at the forefront of pioneering from the agency side of that. So they bring the business case perspective of, particularly digital streaming of content. And what they want to do is actually make content available to everyone through their platform, and they've been recognised as being one of Europe's most innovative digital leaders across all different industries. So, I was really pleased when David accepted the offer to come and talk, because this is one of those cutting edge areas that I know that we haven't covered in the course before, but it's time to really now deep dive into that.
Yeah, and in fact, we had someone from Maikuju as well as a student before, which I don't think was highlighted in the slide before. So another interesting case to learn from for sure. We also have Piers Connolly, who is the head of strategy and digital at the Norwegian Football Federation. And if I'm not mistaken, he's been there for quite a while. So he's, an expert in his domain when it comes to strategy and digital from the perspective of Norwegian football and their FA. So, yeah, Stephen, anything else that you want to add as to what Piers may bring to the table?
The unique aspect of Pierce's presentation is that the environment that they live in, that they have midnight sun in the summertime. They call off games only when it gets to minus 12 degrees in the wintertime. These are hardy people, but also they need to, and they've decided that they want to use technology as part of the experience and part of the motivation into participation as much as possible. So, what they're able to achieve in their environment, it has great lessons for everyone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then we have Fiona Green. She's the co-founder of Winners. And she is an expert when it comes to data, fan engagement, and sponsorship. And she's been on the course before as well. And we've learned so much because she consults for organizations such as FIFA, UEFA, and she's just recently published a book on data and CRM in sports. So I guess you could say that she's an expert very much so in this domain. Right, Stephen?
Particularly at organizations going, okay, well, I need to be a data-driven type of company. What do I need to do? She's expert, and that's the sort of thing that she deals with on a day-to-day basis. So, and she's able to put that in very simple, plain language for everyone. And she loved her experience with the program so much previously that she wrote to me and said, I've got to be involved again in the future. So it's great to have her, because as you mentioned, her book, the CRM and winning with data has been shortlisted for different prizes as well. It's a great read too. So she'll unpack a lot of the things that she's also learned after launching that book too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And these are just some of the speakers that we have on board. And there's a few more surprises that we're going to be announcing soon, but we'll probably be able to give you a sneak peek here. And we can say that we have someone from Tottenham Hotspur who's going to come in and talk to us, particularly, in general about their whole digital transformation project, but particularly with their new stadium, which is, something that is going to be really fantastic to hear about, because there's a lot of expectation for that stadium for Tottenham Hotspur. We have someone as well that most likely will come and speak to us from Deloitte. We have someone as well from the USL. So there's a lot of profiles that, as I was saying before, Stephen is an expert in his domain, and just having access to Stephen himself is an absolute delight, because he's so knowledgeable on all these issues. But not only that, he's able to bring a great network, and we're able to complement it with fantastic guest speakers that make the program really well-rounded. So if you are in a situation where you feel that this is something that you need, this is something that adds value to you, your organization, or your career, if you're looking to further develop, I would really stress those 3 points. The content that you're going to have access to, which is up-to-date, relevant, and very high level. the network that you're going to be accessing. Like I said, the program has attracted and is already attracting interest from people in top organizations in sports, and the fantastic guest speakers that are going to come and complement the sessions. And I would add one more as the icing on the cake, which is we provide mentorship guidance. So we're here along your learning journey to have the opportunity to converse with you if you have any type of question, or if you have any type of advice that you need from this standpoint. At SBI, and particularly with Stephen leading this course, there's access to to having support from a mentorship standpoint. So you really do get access to many benefits and key takeaways with this program. That said, to conclude our presentation, and then we're going to move on to the Q&A. The course starts March 25th. If you want more information, you can go to www.sbibarcelona.com. There's our email as well, info@sbibarcelona.com. We're on social media, as you see in the footer of the presentation. Get in touch with our team, have a conversation with us, because that's usually the first step. We like to understand where you're at, what are your needs, what are your gaps, and based on that, we look to fill those gaps, whether it is through contacts, through content, through mentorship, whatever it is, the gap that you're looking to fill, this program will deliver that, especially if you're in a position where you want to lead or manage or be an agent of change in your organization. So have a look at sbibarcelona.com for more info. Of course, Stephen and I are available on social media. You can connect with us, and we're always very accessible, and feel free to get in touch with our team. So that said, we can move on then to our questions. So I've seen that there's a few already typed in there. So let me go ahead and read them, and then Stephen can maybe tackle a few of those. So we have a question here coming in from Amado. So Amado, maybe you can tell us where you're connecting from, because you have a very interesting question. And Stephen, Amado says, what type of recommendations could be made to a developing football association as part of its digital communication? Senegal.
The interesting thing that always comes up in our course is the different state of the economy that the individuals are in, or the environment they're in. Someone might be at Real Madrid, but someone's at a much smaller club somewhere else. And so, I always knew that this would be the first kind of question. The first thing to do is really, and particularly if you're in Africa, and we get a lot of interest actually out of Africa, there seems to be some level of movement going on, and we had a La Liga representative from there last year too, is to understand what is the best way to invest your resources based on the current environment there. You wouldn't necessarily use PC-based technologies, because most people, if they're going to be Wi-Fi connected or internet connected, are going to be on mobile, and that actually creates opportunity for you. So it's about finding out where you most have penetration, and then so if people are using mobile, for example, then what are they using? Are they using messenger apps, which I know are very popular in the GCC where I'm based? Okay, so do you have opportunities to grow a WhatsApp base, for example, or in social media? Where are the most of your fans? Are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Are they on Snapchat, Twitter? Where are the people? And that's why it comes back to actually knowing your people. So if you don't know them so well, then maybe that's a start as well. Okay, well, we need to build out an understanding of our people, and then how can you do that? Do you run surveys at game time? Do you put different things online and see what works, and try to bring people into a platform of your own, and start to build out a CRM program and those kind of things. So it's about understanding where the organization is best off going, because I understand you have very limited resources. So it's about, moving in a phased way. Okay, so we're here now. If we can understand a little bit more, then, we create a little bit more value at that stage, and then that opens us up as well. So it's really coming back a step as well. What is it that we ultimately want to do with our digital media communications, and then to work back from that? Okay, what market research do we need to go through? And I've given you some insights along there over the last couple of minutes, I hope.
Yeah, that's a great question. So thank you for that. We also have another interesting question from Adam Spencer. So Adam, thank you for your question. In fact, he has two questions. And he says, how will OTT and other platforms with streaming services manage some of the growing issues with piracy? So that's a very interesting question. And then the second part, he says, will clubs look to control all of the content connected to the club in the future? So great questions, Adam.
There's a saying that around digital evolution, and actually the digital technologies move quicker than the regulators, and we see that like that BLQ piracy that's happening out of Saudi Arabia that hasn't successfully been able to be stopped as yet as well. So regulators are really challenged, and we hope that governments will continue to work on those types of issues, which are above the means of any organisation. For example, beIN, have got a lot of support from different leagues around the world and so on. They still aren't able to impact the change that's needed to shut down that level of piracy. So it really is a regulator issue. And we see also the same kind of thing happening in the data realm, even with, Facebook has been under fire because they haven't, created the proper security that is needed for their data as well. And so that's probably the most that organizations can do, is really protect their own assets in a regulatory way, and we talk about that through the GDPR and that kind of thing as well. But yes, it's a wide open area that because, as I mentioned from the very outset, we're in a totally different time of history, and the organizations are pioneering and uncovering new opportunities for pirates, but also for people who want to innovate and so on. But then the regulators come in later. Then your next part, well, that really comes down to an ownership area, and probably what will happen is that media will continue to fragment more. We've seen it through the rights of the EPL, how they package some of the rights up so that they could be streaming rights and so on. But after maybe the next round of rights, we'll see it more broken down, even into what clubs are allowed to have. And one of the conversations that we had, particularly through the last course, was the different kind of ownership structures that appear in different leagues. The MLS has a different management arrangement between the clubs and than the league itself, and so they'll do deals at the central level that will have an impact on what the teams can do. But that is the challenge for clubs. And talked about being in a digital media revolution, that the thing that teams are really challenged with is, okay, we give away so much value in the course of every day, the content that we create so that fans can be engaged and entertained and informed and all of that kind of thing. What's the kind of content that we can keep for ourselves? And I think the strategic question becomes, okay, well, can we really drive some value by putting our content behind a firewall, or should we look to create revenues through digital in another means? And that other means is typically through the advertising online and increasing the value of corporate sponsorships, which are more in control. It's easier to negotiate with brands than it is to encourage fans to get behind your content that's behind a paywall. And I think it's going to be interesting where that goes, and how many subscriptions will be enough for us in the future. What's that? I don't know that yet. I've got a subscription for Netflix, and then I've got another one for my music streaming, and that, what's going to be peak subscription for us, and will that content that we're holding back to get our fans to pay for, will that be the right thing to do from a fan engagement point of view? They're the kind of considerations that leadership need to take into account.
Yeah, very good point. I just myself subscribed to Amazon Prime not long ago, and it's another one to add to the list, right? That we keep on adding more subscription-based content. So, very good question. Thank you for that. We probably have time for one or two more questions. And Rana, by the way, I want to acknowledge Thomas van der Woesche, who says, hi guys, thanks for an excellent presentation. So thank you for your feedback, Thomas, from MBP in Barcelona. And then we have Rana. So Rana is also part of the SBI global community based in India, and he's got a two-part question. And I think we've touched upon a couple of these points, but I think it's important to really highlight, because Rana brings up some very interesting questions here. And he says, what's the most important thing to bring to digital transformation? Is it resources or is it mentality? And I think we talked about this before, right? So Stephen, tell us a little bit about what you like to stress about the culture and how important it is for digital transformation.
Yeah, it's first and foremost about purpose and vision, and like in the course of put together a number of case studies to arrive at a conclusion that any organization that creates a purpose, particularly because we're dealing with football, but we're dealing with sports, which enrich people's lives, that putting a purpose together for the team, but beyond the team, to make people's lives better. And I spoke about AS Roma and them being the most connected, but others say exactly that. We want to make our fans' lives better. They're going to be more enriched lives for having us as their team that they follow. Anything that follows that kind of paradigm, if you like, is the most important thing, because then it gives the people in the organization a higher purpose to pursue as well. And so unlocking more value out of your people so they're more motivated. So, the workload, your resources are going better, but the ideas flow more, and so on. So it really becomes about unlocking a culture of people that collaborate and are unified in support of a mission that they understand that is bigger and better than the organization, because that's how millennials and Gen Z and future followers evaluate their career as well. It's not just about the money or the training and those things, which are absolutely important, but they need to feel that they're part of something larger. And it just so happens that sport is such a great platform to do that, and it resonates more with the fans when that's all in place as well.
Good point, and that sort of touched upon the second question that Rana had. So we can look at one final question before we wrap things up. I know some of you have put a lot of very interesting questions, and I would say that stay tuned. We may have another webinar like this, but if you really want to learn more, feel free to check out the course on managing digital transformation in sport, and you're going to get a lot of insight as well from the learnings of that program. But one last question here coming in from Jerry Maulana. So thank you for your question, Jerry. And he's coming from the Football Federation of Indonesia. And he says, it's very interesting, but I want to know how to manage negative comments or negative attention on all our social media platforms for the good of our business. Now, he goes on to say, we agree that digital is really important for our business, and we have done a lot of innovation on digital content, but negative comments always haunt our organization, and the responses are often not related to the content we provide. So he says, if always the response is negative because of organizational problems, it will be something cracked something cracked to our business too. How should we manage it? So I guess he's talking about how to manage, negative feedback or negative comments online.
Yeah, I think you need to put that in context of an overall community management program. For example, go and do a search on Gatorade community management and have a look at YouTube and different articles on them to get a good idea of what holistically that means. So then you're not dealing with any one comment in isolation, but it's part of a bigger picture. But you just need to use the wisdom of the organization as well. Do you respond to certain things, or when do you engage? What level of transparency do you provide? And that's an interesting topic, is because these days people expect organizations to be far more transparent than prior to social media, and because also social media gave the fans and those people interested in your organization a voice. So it really needs to be balanced out, on a judgment basis, but also based on your organizational values, and let your values guide the type of response that you provide back to the negativity by, providing responses that are really in tone. And also, this is when it helps to have leadership involved on social media, because those people can deliver more personal messages than others. And I spoke about Peter Moore from Liverpool before. He said, I'm on social media because of the benefits that I get from it. He said, yes, I get profanity directed at me that would make my grandmother blush, but he said for all of the negativity, it's still worthwhile me being online. So you really need to find out, you need to be true to the organization and work out what value it gives you, and then you put the negativity in context of all of those other factors I mentioned about before as well.
Excellent. Well, thanks everybody for fantastic questions. It would have been great to try and get through all of them, but unfortunately, due to lack of time, we're not able to do that. But feel free to follow us on social media. Like I said, the course starts March 25th on managing digital transformation in sport. I know Alex from Edmonton was asking if we do face-to-face workshops across different parts of the world. We do sometimes, but really what we've done is we've created a methodology online that allows us to go global. So if you are looking to learn on something of this nature, Alex, you can be located in Canada, you can be located in Europe, you can be located anywhere in the world, because this program allows you to connect. And you're going to see that, a lot of times people have some questions about online learning and how much engagement there is. But, we didn't get a chance to go into much detail here, but we're still getting WhatsApp messages from our students sharing pictures that they're together in different congresses of sports business across the world. They have never met before. They met online through this course, and now they've built long-standing relationships. So the benefit of studying in this type of program is that you connect with people worldwide, and you don't necessarily need to travel to Barcelona, or we don't need to go to Edmonton. It's the type of course that you can do from anywhere, and you're engaging and you're connecting from, with all these executives that we talked about before. Now, Akhil also said he wanted some advice. Well, Akhil, one of the great benefits of the course, like I said before, is that you do have this mentorship component. So if you want access to Stephen, to myself, to the SBI team, we're here for that, and the program delivers that mentorship. So I know you talked about having some particular advice. The program does offer that to you. So not only do you learn, you connect, and you engage, you also have an opportunity to talk about your particular career path and bounce off ideas with top experts like Stephen and others that come and deliver some of the master classes. So that's on one end. And I know Shanaz has a question as well. We'd love to get to that one, Shanaz, but we'll leave that for perhaps the next webinar, which hopefully we have before the course start date. That said, I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody who's connected here tonight from all over the world. Some of you, it may be daytime. Some of you, it's probably, in the middle of the night. and some of you are in the middle of the afternoon. So wherever you're connecting from, thank you for taking the time to listen to us and to have the opportunity to engage with us in this webinar. And finally, a big, big thank you to Stephen, who takes time out of his busy schedule to come on and share his thoughts and his key insight with all of us tonight. So thank you, Stephen, and it's always a pleasure, as always, collaborating with you.
Thanks, Diego. Thanks to everyone for being so engaged in the presentation. Glad you enjoyed it.
All right, everybody. Until next time, take care. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.